I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Wareham Board of Selectmen in a joint meeting with the Finance Committee for Wednesday, November 28th at 6:48 p.m. The first order of business will be to elect a clerk pro tem. May I have a motion, please?
If Mrs. Begley is so willing, I would so move.
Second.
Any discussion, comments, objections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion made by Mr. Titlebaum, seconded by Mr. Slavin, 4-0-0. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Madam Chair, in attendance is myself, Ellen Begley, Chairperson, Kara Winslow, Selectman Peter Titlebaum, Selectman Alan Slavin, and the interim town administrator is absent at the moment, but he is in attendance, Derek Sullivan.
Thank you. Madam Chairman?
I'd like to call our meeting back into order to hold FinCom. Before we, Civic Donald here, our clerk tonight, and before we have the roll call, I just want to do our thing that we do every single FinCom meeting, if we have any citizen participation. Mrs. Smith?
Thank you, Donna. If I could just take a minute, since both boards are here together. One of the things that I've been mulling over in my mind after town meeting is the fact that there needs to be some discussion about the preparation of the warrant prior to town meeting and how that's all handled. And the warrant comes under the hands of the Board of Selectmen, so it is the role of the Selectmen to do that. But at this town meeting, it was very obvious that there were certain articles to which there probably had been little or no discussion prior coming to town meeting, and I would like to at some point either get on your agenda or have a joint meeting and talk about how we can better prepare for town meeting and make things so that it works better for the community as well, so that warrant articles are vetted prior to them being inserted in the warrant, whether that means setting a time frame, setting a process, some way to make it so that when these warrant articles come before both boards for a vote, you have all the information that you need at hand. And if not, perhaps, and one of the things I would suggest to you, maybe having a joint meeting where you have, years ago, the department heads would come in and talk about their requests that they were putting forward before both boards. So that way you had all the information needed. You could ask your questions before it actually got onto the warrant and the warrant closed. So I have a couple of thoughts and ideas to share with you, but while I have you both here, I know I've talked individually with a couple people, but I thought since you're all here at one time, I wanted to give you just something to think about over the holidays. And town meeting will come quickly. So it's something that if you give it some thought and you have the wherewithal that you might want to pursue something to make it flow a little smoother, it's something you're going to have to start off in early January to do so that you can have these warrant articles come in prior to the closing of the warrant. So just a suggestion and thought I had, and I thought I would share it since both boards are together, because I know it's comes at the hand of the board, but the Finance Committee has to recommend the financial articles and the financial impact of all articles. So I just wanted to talk with both of you about it.
Madam Moderator, I personally appreciate that. It's my understanding that two of the board members here, Mrs. Begley and Mr. Titlebaum, are going to be looking at a way to make that policy better for the Board of Selectmen. So if you don't have any opposition, I would ask for you to share your ideas directly with them, and
Be happy to do that.
perhaps after the new year when they've come up with a guideline, we can all look at it together.
I actually, under Mark Andrews, put together a form which initially started out to be used by the petitioners, which laid out how you would write a warrant article, what are the components of a warrant article, what you needed to do, the whole process for them, since generally they don't have any help. And as a result of that, Mr. Andrews asked if we could do the same form for department heads. And it worked really well because they put their warrant article together, they put the information in, and then they turned it in. And of course, you would go over it and revise it, but at least you had some inkling of what the warrant article was about and why they were requesting it. So it gave you some background information, and I'd be happy to share those two forms. I believe the office does have it.
Yes, and if you don't mind, if you could only share directly with those two board members, because this is a volunteer project. It's not a project of the board.
Okay.
And I don't want any issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I would welcome your suggestions and your forms as well. And I would ask that the Board of Selectmen, we would all ask that maybe, because we visit with each and every department head when we're going over the budgets. We might want to look at streamlining it and meeting with them together. It'd save you guys some time, unless you got a lot of time. And it would save us all some time if we could work together on the budget items with the department heads. You might want to think about it, but we are going to be starting to schedule our meetings very shortly. So if someone wants to get back to the FinCom, we'd be happy to work with the selectmen.
Well, and I think it might be a good idea. I don't know that the whole board can be present for those meetings, Madam Chair, because it becomes very difficult. I know for myself, I hate when people are trying to revolve around my schedule. But if we could even get a couple members that could attend and report back to the board. And in fact, I will make a note to the girls in the office who are going to watch this tape and do the minutes, if they could put a request for this to be an agenda item on the December 18th agenda for us, to make sure that we get a couple people who can commit to that.
Okay.
I think that's a good start, a good place to start. I'm not your chair, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyone else?
Yeah, no. Madam Chair, through you, just an observation. I think that one of the problems at the last town meeting was, if I'm right, there were some warrants that had dollars and cents, and the selectmen, and no one even saw them. They just showed up at town meeting and they were there, and I just think that that's wrong. And if this brings that forward to change that, I welcome it.
Yes, Bonnie?
I can push the button. What I found frustrating for this past town meeting was that things that came up that were presented on the warrant, we had a really short time to look at this warrant. And I feel as though that if the selectmen have items that they're going to bring up to a town meeting warrant, that if they would extend an invitation for the FinCom to be at some of these meetings. Not all of us watch every selectmen's meeting or, know what's going on down the line around here. But if it's something that's going to be presented to the FinCom for their opinion, maybe an invitation of, hey, we're going to look at such and such, and we're having so-and-so in to take a look at this. Would you like to attend? Then when it shows up on a warrant, we have a little more information and a little more background as to what's going on.
Well, Mrs. Catulli, if you don't mind, through you, Madam Chair, one of the reasons why Mr. Teitelbaum and Mrs. Begley have undertaken this project to create the policy is to ensure that that happens. There were articles that were voted onto the warrant as Board of Selectmen articles, and the Board of Selectmen had not seen them until the night that we voted. So there were issues, there were time constraints. I'm not going to make excuses, because quite frankly there are no excuses when the five of us aren't on top of things. But many lessons were learned, and I'm a firm believer that we learn from our mistakes and we move forward and do better the next time. And that's what my colleagues intend to do, and I think it will benefit not just the Board of Selectmen, but the Finance Committee and the community as a whole. And quite frankly, the petitioners, or the individual who's looking to have that warrant article placed. It doesn't look good when somebody comes forward with a warrant article that the Board of Selectmen standing up, the Finance Committee standing up saying, I don't know if we have the money for it, and the Board of Selectmen standing up saying, I don't know if we want to do this. Yet we put it on the warrant. So I'm very hopeful that in the next few weeks, we're going to have a good, solid policy, and I know my colleagues well, and I trust that they will cover every avenue that they can, and they'll be talking to everybody. So I think we'll all be happy with what they come up with, and they might get a sticker.
Go ahead. Madam Chair, if I might, just to answer Mr. Camerato's question as to not having embodies money in the original warrant article. When you craft a warrant article before you post the warrant and in the posting of the warrant, you generally do not want to put the dollar amount in the original warrant article. When you call for a warrant, that's only to tell people and give them fair warning of what is going to be discussed. You want to be careful about putting dollars into the warrant article because that limits the scope of your article. So in other words, if you had, I moved to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $50,000 to buy a rake. By having that $50,000 in there, it limits the scope of the article, and you cannot increase that on the floor. So generally, you try not to put the money in there when you write the warrant article. You put it in the motion. But that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't have a discussion prior to about what is that going to cost and do you have the money for it. So I just want you to understand that when you see the warrant and it doesn't have dollar amounts, that's probably the reason why they don't have a firm amount at the time the warrant is put together. They're still working maybe on getting proposals, and you don't want to limit. It was the same with the McKinley-Vento. You didn't know what was coming back from the state, and if you had put a dollar amount, then that was going to tie your hands. So you have to be very careful in the original posting of original warrant articles not to tie the scope of the article, and especially with CPC articles, because you can't increase those either. You can decrease them, but you can't increase them. So if you posted your warrant early on and then you realized you needed another $10,000, you wouldn't be able to do that at town meeting. But again, it doesn't mean that you can't have an inkling within your discussions and know ahead of time approximately what that's going to cost you and whether you have the money or not.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm not really talking specifically about item numbers and things like that. I'm talking about the fact that I was asked to give my opinion about wind farming, solar panels, selling electricity, when I had absolutely no prior education as to what was going on. That's it.
Yeah, okay, all right. Go ahead. Mr. Slade?
Oh, I'm sorry. My board may want to comment.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
you want to start? Okay, you can be first. Mr. Slavin.
Part of the process was that people would come before the Board of Selectmen. Some of the proponents didn't know they had to go before the FinCom and vice versa a little bit, so therefore there was lack of communication. It's not an excuse, it's just what really happened. We have issues on the process itself. We actually have policies in place. If a department is doing a CPA article from a department of the town, they are supposed to get pre-approval by the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Doesn't happen. We have some other policies in place as well. So when they go ahead and look at the policies and make a change, this all has to be wrapped up. The town of Bourne, I'm not saying they're better than us, but the bottom line is their Board of Selectmen and their Finance Committee meet with the department heads as a group always. It's smoother, it's easier. Everybody hears the same story. Everybody gets the same questions answered. It's foolishness. We're taking department heads and having them come in at night for the Board of Selectmen and during a daytime, and it's double time. We're paying. The town is paying for people to come twice to answer the same things. I think it's foolish. We have a joint meeting required by charter now for the school committee, meeting with the Board of Selectmen on the budget. I think it's in January, and this should be a standard policy, period. So it really doesn't require a lot of discussion. It's had a lot of issues. We have time issues that we don't get done. This is one way to take care of it. So I'm all in favor of getting this done.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Mrs. Begley, do you have any comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel your pain because I felt woefully unprepared as well. And that was the impetus that had Selectman Titlebaum and myself. We talked about it and said, well, what can we do to make it different? So we're going to work together on a policy that will certainly bring with, before we bring it to the Board of Selectmen, we can have a discussion with the FinCom and see if there's anything you'd like to add to it. Because it's ridiculous for us to we're all here to work for the town, to make things better, but it doesn't look good to the general public. It doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good to this board. It doesn't feel good to your committee, to feel unprepared in making really decisions that impact the entire community. So hopefully we can do something that we can get in place before Springtown meeting. That's our intent.
Thank you, Mrs. Begley. Mr. Titlebaum, do you have a quick comment?
Yes, you know, the responsibility for the warrant does lie with the Board of Selectmen, and I'm certainly not looking to blame us for our past performance, but we certainly should learn from that. And I think it behooves us to come up with a system to put in place in concert with the FinCom, in concert with other people who are involved in the entire process, in concert with the moderator, so that we can do this efficiently, fairly, as Mr. Slavin suggested, not waste employees' time and our money by having them come in twice to give the same spiel to two different boards. It's a matter of efficiency. It's a matter of setting something up so that everybody who's involved in the warrant article process knows what the expectations are, knows when the deadlines are, knows when they got to go talk to the FinCom and the Selectmen, and when they have to have all their ducks in a row. And I think when you do that and you systemize it, I think going forward it's going to make life a lot easier and for everybody. And last but not least, for our moderator, which is a big concern. I know she has to work a lot harder on this stuff at the last minute than she really ought to. So with that in mind, I'm glad to be doing this.
Thank you, Mr. Titlebaum. So if what I'm hearing to the Madam Chair, Madam Moderator, is that this board is fully ready, willing, and hoping that we can come up with a better system. Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Worthen. We were wondering where you were. And hopefully we can accomplish that sooner rather than later. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McDonald, I see you getting ready to fall out of your seat. Please.
He's just itching to be.
I really don't have anything to say about that. I was just going to mention, and sorry for being a spoilsport, that we have a very full agenda.
Yes, and we're moving on right now. Okay.
Our agenda, I would appreciate it.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to the discussion regarding the financials. I guess everybody has a copy of the financials now, thanks to Tom.
Yes.
Has my board had an opportunity to go over them? Because they were sent electronically from Mr. Heath and from myself, so. And these basically from July through October? September. Oh, September, I can't read it. It says, oh, okay. It does say October.
Mr. Sullivan, is that a typo?
This one should be, if it was part of the packet, this should be this.
Into the microphone, please. People are watching.
It should be this year's fiscal numbers on there.
But is it through
Just-
October 31st, Mr. Sullivan? It
No.
says July 1.
It says, if you look, it says 2011. That's just
Yeah.
the header on there.
Okay. But
So-
just, Mr. Sullivan, just for clarification for everybody here and for our large viewing audience at home, what dates?
July 1st, 2012 through September 30th, 2012.
Thank you.
Do these reflect, have you had the opportunity to confirm these numbers are fairly accurate? Well, at the time they had come out, you know, are these numbers as accurate as the administration? Are these good numbers?
Madam
Please.
Chair, these are the numbers based on what we've paid out through our system.
These are what are in the VADAR system. They're not audited because we don't do the audit till the end of the
Okay.
fiscal year unless we're going to do a mid-year. So this is currently what we have in our systems.
But Mr. Sullivan, these are reliable numbers based upon what our financial activity has been in that time frame.
Correct. They've
Thank
been
you.
put in by the accounting office. So.
Okay, Go ahead.
Guys,
No, remember, we have an audience here, too.
yes,
Well,
we have a
and
large
what
viewing
I'm-
audience.
I think it'd be better if Derek had an opportunity just to basically go over
Okay.
the management letter and maybe highlight a few of the items that are obviously glaring or not issues so much as that are out of the norm. So you can give everybody a feel for what you're doing and then maybe ask questions after that. Thank you.
Yeah, part of this, which the viewing audience couldn't see, is there's a memo attached to this explaining some of, if you will, the variances. Since this is through September, technically it should be, you would think the run rate would be 25% of the year's budget. Yeah. So in looking at that, what we went through was on the variances, anything that was high, any expenditures that were, really over 30% on there, or that were glaringly outliers, were looked at to try and figure out what's going on. One of the first ones is the Selectmen expenses budget. And as in many of our budgets, at the beginning of the fiscal year, you pay a lot of your bills. That's when your bills are due, whether it's memberships and such. Large bill for the Selectmen is the MMA dues, which was paid out. So you'll see that was the first sort of outlier on there. Now, the next item on there,
Question on that. This budget is not an accumulation of monthly budgets, so
Tom, would you make,
you don't anticipate the fact that the first,
would you make sure you get through the chair, Tom?
excuse me,
We'll keep it in line tonight. Go ahead, though.
this isn't a build-up from monthly budgets, so you don't anticipate the fact that you'll be front-end loaded with this selectman budget? Or do you just take an annual budget and divide it by 12?
that's a simple way on it, because we've never had these reports put together in multi-years. The first year that we've even had this sort of report format was last year. So if you look at that, it was simply unexpected year to date. As to doing the actual trending of if every year this is where it's going to be, no, we don't have that sort of capability. That's why in these reports we would give the explanations on it. That's why there's the outliers.
But you could be going along very well, and then you could have something that hits you in May,
Right,
the
and
other
that's
way, and it's not anticipated in the budget that way. There's no flow of spending over a course of a year that's demonstrated in the budget.
there is not in this report. This is the report that the Finance Committee worked with administration and asked for.
This is the actual expenses that are in the VEDA reporting
I
system.
understand
So-
that. When you compare it against the budget, I would think the budget would be a development of monthly expectation, or even less than that, in terms of when the demand was gonna be made, when the expense was gonna happen.
What you're effectively asking for would be to have every department head. It's the department head's budget on there. So you would have every department head sitting in here explaining their budget for that month. Typically, that's during when we have the January meeting on there. You'll go over their budgets, they'll explain it. When they budget, they understand where they are on there. They've planned out what their expenses are, and so it doesn't matter to the department. No,
No.
for the whole year. They understand what their costs are for the whole year. They know their MMA dues are in September. They know that maybe in, like the school, in June, they're going to give out a large check for the rest of the year. The department heads understand their budgets. But we're not budgeting in that way. We're not showing that with this report. This report is simply a monthly revenue and expenditure report.
And Tom, where you're going is you're doing private sector versus municipal, and it's all different. I know where you're going. Private sector does it the way you're talking, but we don't do it that way. They do it annual way, and they don't budget like the private sector.
They're not
But-
forecasting.
Do you know whether you're on track or off track
Well,
in the course of a year?
but I think what I hear Mr. Worthen asking, and I think it's a valid question, Mr. Sullivan, is this shows us that we've expended 25% and or more in some cases of our annual budget for these line items. Where are we with the revenues? are we where we thought we would be at this point of the year in terms of tax collection, local aid, and other dollars that come into the town. So I think what he's looking for is to see not just where we see, you know, expended, expensed year to date, but where are we collecting on our revenues? For example, we had a November 1st tax bill due. Did we collect 100% of that, 88% of that? So
It's a reactive
The, we wouldn't know anything in November because this is obviously through
Right, I'm
September,
just- I
but I
mean-
think he's got a different vision. What he's actually asking is, if we just base it on a quarterly, how can you truly do that? Because you should know on September, you're maybe 15% of your budget is supposed to be expended, because you know the next month you're only going to expend 5%, but we don't have that, and that's what he's looking for. on
No,
that.
and I heard that piece of it, and I understand because there is a difference between the private sector and the public sector in that specific part. But the other piece of what he was asking was, do we have the money to pay for the remaining 75% of our anticipated expenses through the year? Where are we with the revenue? Am I wrong, Mr. Worthen, or was that part of the?
I was just trying to see if the selectmen expect to spend 40% of their budget in the first 3 months, and they're okay, or whatever the number happened to be, or 54% of the budget in the first 3 months, and that's how it's budgeted, because toward the end of the year, it's gonna slope off, and they're gonna, at the finish line, they'll be close to their budget. But if you sat here and said, okay, they're 54% over, you don't know whether they're on track or off track, because the track is measured every year rather than every month. You're not seeing milestones along the way as to where they are versus where they plan to be. And I would think it would, help, you know where your cash is, you know where you are.
But I think, Mr. Worthen, through your chair, that the goal of this report is to give us a better idea of where we are throughout a year. So, for example, at the end of September, we would expect that most of the budgets would be at around 25% expended. There are going to be variables because there are certain front-loaded expenses like membership dues and things of that nature that we would pay out at the beginning of the year, but we should be able to explain those variances, which is what Mr. Sullivan explained in his memo. If we look at this again in 3 months,
No, I understand where you're going. I just think it's, you clean the beaches in the summertime, so you have that expense in the summertime, and that should reflect in the maintenance department's budget. It's the higher expense when it happens, the expense occurs.
okay.
At the end of the year, you find out whether you made it or whether you didn't make it.
Mr. Gray?
If I can make a suggestion, first of all, I think this report generally is good and certainly is better information than we're used to getting. So first of all, I compliment you on that. I realize that the budget is done on a year's basis, but I think that over time, you'll know that the expected percentage in the first quarter will be higher or lower. And I think as you get experience in this after a year or two, you can put change those percentages, not changing the whole budget, but changing those percentages expected, so that it would be helpful to those of us looking at this. If we see it and it's expected to be, instead of 25%, 15%, then when we see something that's approaching that figure, we'll know that that was expected and the way it should be. It'd make your comments a lot easier too, to do as you're doing it.
Thank you. Mr. Trudell?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, Larry, she's tough on you.
No, I'm not.
From my perspective, we pay department heads good money to manage their budget. The buck stops at the town administrator's desk. And on a monthly basis, he should be able to give you a summary when the numbers are getting out of whack. If you look at the police department, you see that he's at 28%. Okay, that's fine. But the question becomes, I don't want any May surprises. He's paid good dollars up front as a department head to manage his budget, just like Mark Gifford is. There are some surprises that come down the road that we cannot avoid. But I do believe that holding the department heads by the town administrator responsible for that budget is where we need to start in order to grasp control. The other half of that is, when I look at the budget, I'm pleased to see the selectmen are trying to address the budget and the expenditures. I've never known that the selectmen have given guidance to the town administrator in any manner or form on where they think the budget should go on a yearly basis. And we in the finance committee sit there and we have our hearings. We have some data that we gather, and it doesn't seem to go anywhere. So I am pleased to see that we're trying to talk about the budget and our expenditures.
Mr.
Madam Chair,
McDonald. Go ahead, sure.
May I just explain? Mr. Trudell, one of the projects that I've worked on this year was that I went through the policies, the selectmen's policies, and what I discovered was that in the past, the selectmen would annually put together a fiscal plan or vision, or they called it all different things. That has not been done in at least 7 or 8 years. And I do intend to bring forth a policy for this board that will not just simply be a plan for this year, but will require future boards annually to put together a plan and offer some guidance to the town administrator. It is the responsibility of the board to give the town administrator some expectations, because absent that, we are setting him up for failure.
That is correct.
So if we don't tell him what we want, we can't criticize him for not knowing.
Okay.
Mr. Slavin had a comment. After you're done with Mr. McDonald, can you
Yes,
just
Mr.
even?
McDonald?
But that's your second time first, so
My job tonight is, through the chair, is to be a killjoy. Number one, this is a great report. This is better than anything we've got. The problem is we keep talking about the philosophical issues of what we're doing here. And I think most of the variances, or at least addressing the basic variances, are right in front of us. And if we allow him to go through the report, he's going to be able to give us this is our first blush for all of us together. Some of us have done this before, but, you know, we're past the philosophical stage. We know that this is a good look, and it's our first look together, and I think it's really critical that we allow him to get through some level of this before we start talking about the philosophical sides of it. Let's talk about the numbers a little bit and get a better idea. And again, this is the kind of information that's important to us. And so let's, focus on the numbers. No, I'm not trying to be. I told you I'm being a killjoy tonight, but I think it's critical that we let him go through the report.
He's got some.
So thank you. I just wanted to say
Okay.
that.
Okay, Mr. Slavin?
Mr. Slavin.
First off, just so everybody understand, the microphones do not turn off. So you need to push them away or whatever, because people will be making comments and it goes off on each other. I look at this as a request I made a while ago. And again, I'm talking as if I'm basically a practicing accountant, which is part of my background. I'll use a very simple term. This is a reactive type report rather than a proactive. I believe what we can do, and which Derek can do once he has enough numbers, is to load in simply from the Vadar system 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 years worth of monthly numbers, and therefore what he can actually project out, and rather than just saying we've gone through one quarter, we expect to spend 25%. It could be that on a certain quarters, we have 40% revenue come in of the total. Another quarter could be 20%. It does vary. With enough history, things really stay the same. They don't change very much. And this is something that can be done. What this does right now, so everybody understands, it gives you a warning. If you all of a sudden you see that you got 60 or 70% of your expense budget for that particular department, actually occurred in one quarter, it's like a signal that, hey, you need to go look at this and ask the department what's happening. If you're able to do it the other way, you'll see a percentage and say you spent 60%, but your history shows every year you spend 60%, it's fine. On the revenue side, it's even more important because the revenue does fluctuate depending on what the economy is doing. The percentage of each piece coming in stays the same, but it's the overall. So all I'm saying is this is the first step, and it will require some more work, which is easily can be done, but it needs some time. Thank you.
I agree with Mr. McDonald. I would really appreciate hearing Mr. Sullivan's explanations as to, some of these notes here. I mean, he just went through the selectmen's one, but onto the accounting situation. Like I said, I don't know everything, so I'd really like to know what 53G is.
The 53G accounts are for when there's the building projects going on. There'll be an account that the town holds, so an escrow, if you will, and the expenses are paid out of that. So what happens is the town needs to make sure that they're tracking the monies in there, also the interest, and make sure that what's being brought in and what's being paid out matches up. And to be blunt, for some reason the 53G has been, for the last few years, a tough situation to get their fingers on, because you're having the planning, the accounting, and the treasurers all coming together and saying one thing. What we learned was one department and wasn't keeping track of the interest, said no, all we have to do is this part. Another department was keeping track of something else. So it became, you're speaking probably about maybe a decade worth of issues on here. So at the end of the day, we needed to sit down and get this done, because this is something that goes on our management letter. It's something that needs to be done for our audit. And every year it seemed that there had been a grasp on it and something changed. So we sat down with, they paid to have this done to make sure that we have a new starting point on this.
Just as a follow-up to that, with the expenses of the accounting office being at 100% in the situation the accounting office is currently in, what is your plan for the future? It's pretty much expended, so how do you plan on handling that in the future?
The easy way to go to explain it is last year when we had the similar issue of having a outside vendor coming into the accounting department, we had asked for the finance committee for a transfer until town meeting could approve the actual monies and then transfer the money back to the reserve fund. In speaking with the accounting office, what we've decided is we know that our salaries aren't being expended because the accountant position is not being fully funded at the 92,000, let's say. So each time that there's a check going out to the vendors, we're writing a purchase order against the salary. So now those funds have been encumbered on the salary and we cannot expend that. And then at the Springtown meeting, we're going to transfer it from the salary to the expenses. That would have been number 2 on the accounting. The elections and registrations. The two things that we have are the wages and expenses. And I sat down with Mary Ann to go over this. So we knew we had budgeted correctly on it, and we're trying to figure out what the outlier was, what's causing the overage. And the one thing we all forgot was the special election for the overrides. And that cost roughly, I believe, $15,000 altogether. So that account in April is going to go into deficit, approximately $15,000 for when they expend on that. So we'll have to do one of two things. If we've got monies in another department, we will have to transfer that over in April, or I will be coming in front of this committee asking for a reserve fund transfer. And it's something we probably should have had our finger on, because we all should have realized that when there was a special election, we've budgeted for 3 elections. A 4th election is obviously more money on there. So that's the anticipation of $15,000 on there.
Mr. Sullivan, may I ask a question? There was some talk prior to the special election that the schools may have some available funds to assist in the cost.
It is certainly something that we're going to speak to the school about, as to whether a intermunicipal agreement's going to happen or not. We need to have a backup plan on this.
No, I understand that, but I want to make sure that that conversation happens, and
It will.
thank you.
The MIS data processing, that one is, most of the contractual expenses are paid at the beginning of the fiscal year. So we'd see a large outlier. I think if we look at the expenses on there, they're at 47.4%. When if it would be trending on the monthly at 25%. But then speaking with Mr. Underhill, that he's still on track with the budget that he's projected. Next one is the inspectional services expenses.
Derek, on the MIS, we originally had a year ago projected into the 2013 a certain dollar amount for licensing fees. Is that in this budget still?
We had added that to the budget. This budget's higher in FY13 than it was in 12, and one of the main ones is the licensing. As far as anything else on there, we haven't budgeted for that.
And that licensing is on hold, per se,
That
with that whole issue we're not going to get into here.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Sullivan. For the last 3 years, we've had recommendations that a part-time person be put into that position to assist our coordinator there, Matt. And we haven't done that. It seems to me that this should be a priority. I understand it's the day-to-day business, but I'm trying to point this out to the selectmen. It's a concern of mine.
There's one thing on there is that we did at the October town meeting transfer monies into that department. I believe 22,000 on there for a part-time employee. And in speaking with Mr. Underhill, we're working to get the posting out there. I think he's posted for that before, and he's even gone past into some of his things on there. So it's something that I personally believe in. Inspectional services expenses. The 118 Sandwich Road cleanup ended up, I think we had originally thought it would be approximately $5,000 and was closer to, I think it was closer to 30,000, yeah, a little over 30,000 on there. Part of those monies we encumbered. The 4,999 of the person that did the work with the excavator got brought from FY12 to FY13. However, the other money did not. We encumbered, I believe roughly $23,000. However, that company that we had encumbered those funds for is not the one that ended up doing the work. So since that encumbrance was in the other company's name, we could not use that in the fiscal year. So that money reverted back to FY12 and would have fallen to free cash. So we have transferred, in the fall town meeting, we did make some transfers to account for this. And I believe right now, as of this, the fall town meeting adjustments would not be in this budget because it's technically the September on their revenue and expenditure report. Number 7 on there is the harbor master. We've got the personal wages on there. And the harbor master's department obviously is a much more seasonal department than any of the others. This also includes the hiring of summer staff and the costs associated with their summer patrols. And we also have to realize when speaking about the summer, when the fiscal year starts, you have July and August on there, which obviously is essentially 2/3 of your summertime. And that's when you'll have that larger hit for the employees at the beginning of the year, especially for the summer seasonals. The next part is the municipal maintenance expenses. The vote to transfer in for the cleaning of beaches will bring down the percent expended. Number of the large portion of the budget that has been expended on that task. So in other words, again, 2/3 of the costs on there had been expended. However, they did not vote in the beaches cleaning money. I think it's roughly $25,000 from the fall town meeting, so that would not be accounted for in here. The Council on Aging, this is one that I've asked payroll to research because we know that there's essentially 2 paid employees, and after the fall town meeting, 3 paid employees out of that office. So why that's trending higher, the only thing I can think is that one of the employees that's grant funded, that instead of hitting the grant when it's being put in, it's hitting the regular salary. So that's one of the things that when the accounting office has taken care of what they need to on there, that we're gonna get our fingers on, make sure that the transfers are being made properly on that and any reverses that need to be made.
I'm sorry, I thought I was like missing like half the department. It's just page 3 I seem to be missing.
Maybe 3 of these don't have a page 3.
I'll sell mine.
Do you want mine? Do you want my page 3?
In future budgets, we may consider getting a better copier for the harbor master's office. Yeah. The Council on Aging, also the expenses, they had, if you remember at the end of last year, I believe we were speaking about the carpet in there. Their carpet was folding up, and when to not be rude, but when you're speaking with some of the senior citizens that may have some ambulatory issues on there, having a carpet that's wrinkling loose could be a danger, and that was replaced. However, those budgets were encumbered, and it just needs to be brought over that encumbrance and paid out of there, which seems to be what the issue is on there. The next one is veteran services, and this is one that I want to make sure that we explain, because in FY12 we had budgeted $300,000 for that and expended roughly $259,000. So after looking at the run rates, we brought it down to $275,000 for FY13, believing that that's with the run rates, that's a fair and conservative figure. That's the reason that you would see an expenditure larger in the beginning is part of that from the veteran services. We receive a one-time fee of approximately $22,000. Then what happens is the rest of the cost during the year are actually the payments going out to the veterans themselves on there. So you have this one $22,000 fee, and then the rest is for the veterans on there.
Madam Chair. When I first came on the FinCom, or actually when I first started visiting, this was a big bone of contention here because apparently there's a reimbursement rate that goes along with this as well. And we're reimbursed at 75%. I don't know what the actual figure is, but it could be up to 18 months, or it takes months or even years to get reimbursed for costs. So that's why the budget went from originally a very low number up to this large number. And how do we track that? Is there any mechanism to say, if we expend this amount of dollars, how long does it take us to get us back, or is this just a guesstimate? way of looking at it?
The way of looking at it is for the expenditure part is the actual run rates that we have on there. As far as the reimbursements, usually in our local aid, you'll see that we receive a reimbursement on the veterans there, which is lower than what we actually expend on there. So.
Okay, thank you.
The library is number 12, and their expenses there, the library's main expenses are paid at the beginning of the fiscal year, so they're another one. The SERPED payment is a one-time per calendar year on there. So retirement as well is a one-time payment. The town insurance on the workers' compensation. The deficit in this account was satisfied at the fall town meeting. Those were some of the transfers that we made. Unemployment is one that we're tracking, because when the school had laid off their employees, approximately, I believe, 22 to 23 members of their staff, you had a large unemployment bill in the beginning, roughly $40,000. Now, we increased our unemployment by $105,000 versus FY12 to try and account for this. So it's moved down to about $22,000 a month. Right now, we are trending to overexpend in that account. We're trying to see if there's any people that are going to fall off on there as some of the rules change in the length of time that you can be on unemployment. But this is one that's of concern. And there's really, we have to watch and account for it and be prepared, because you can't just stop paying unemployment. It's something we have to pay. So. The town insurance, the general liability, the premium is a one-time cost, and after the town meeting transfers, there'll still be approximately $30,000 left in the account to cover deductibles. And we do have deductibles at different levels for our motor vehicles. It's $500. For some of the larger items, such as a building or maybe a lawsuit, if you will, it's $5,000 on there. So this is, hopefully we don't incur any of those going forward. The revenue budget is really, you're not looking at too much here, because some of them, like the motor vehicle excise tax, we're not going to start collecting that until February. But one of the big things is the hotel motel tax. That one's been trending down for the last 2 years. You'll notice we did well in the meals tax. We collected $127,000 in the first quarterly disbursement. And the main reason for that, which is much higher than last year, of approximately $40,000, is this year we're collecting on all 12 months. Last year was the first year we're implementing it, so we were only collecting on 10 months. So that's one of the big boons, and we accounted for it. That looks to be trending higher than the estimate that we did at $396 for the year. So, mainly that was the big parts of the revenue. If you're looking at the revenue sheet, which is the last part of the packet there, how we did this was you had the original budget, the year-to-date budget, which is sort of the percent of the budget, and then FY13 versus FY12, where you were at on that.
I don't think we have it in our package.
Okay.
So we'll just go on and act like we have it.
Again, motor vehicle excise tax, which is one of the big ones, you're not going to see really any money in there. As of right now, we have $160,000. Last year, we had $135,000 at the same period. We did budget last year for, I believe, $220,000 for the full year, and ended up receiving revenues of about $259,000. So this is the first time that our motor vehicle excise tax in the last few years is starting to trend up. So we may have hit sort of the go back up on the crest. People are holding on to the cars longer, and eventually people, as the cars break down and it's worth worth more to buy a new car than it is to keep on repairing something. The cost, I think we might be hitting that trend point. So even people with expeditions with 300,000 miles can buy a new car.
50,000.
Okay.
I have through you, Madam Chair. I also noticed, and one of the things you didn't cover was the debt service. It's not trending significantly higher, but it is trending higher. And that might be something, because that is also a critical piece too, I think. So you might want to explain a little bit to us on the debt service.
Yeah, the debt service on there, which let me pull out now.
Just a little bit higher. Page 7.
Yeah. One of the ones and I have to admit that was sort of on the fine line. So if I'm giving you any information, I don't think it would be completely accurate. But my understanding is when we work with Mr. Foster, he has the chart for the entire year on there. So it would be my belief that it's one of the first payments out of there, because we might have some at different periods. But that's one that I can confirm for the committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I ask a question?
Actually, can I, well, you would be first this time.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
I'm
I
sorry.
had that right.
Well, Mr. Slavin was trying to do it again, but
But jump the line.
I have a sticker.
you have a sticker.
through
I
you-
have lots.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Derek. On page 9, Derek,
Mr. Sullivan.
sorry, Mr. Sullivan, other amounts to raise? Was any of that amount decreased by the last town meeting, or is this still looming?
This is the other amounts to be raised. This isn't being used as
Page 9.
traditionally the other amounts to be raised were if you had deficits from the previous years. That's not what this one we're listing it as. If you see with the asterisks there, that's actually the LIUNA, which is $30,000, the overlay reserve of $300,000, and the collective bargaining of $104,000 and change. So those are items that we actually budgeted for
Okay.
in here.
Now, did we have, so the deficits that were looming with various departments, I believe, with the transfers, et cetera, were satisfied, is that correct?
Those deficits were satisfied. We did, in going through and trying to set the tax rate for this year, we discovered two things. One is a good thing. In 2012, the mice for FY11 from the EMS service weren't moved over. So we've actually received a boon of approximately $300,000 towards our free cash this year. One thing we did discover that's a negative that came out of 2010 still is $150,000 worth of deficits going back to some of the items like Bessie Park and such. Some of the funds were, and I'm not going to even try to explain it, because in going through it with accounting, it was basically a nightmare. But if we found these deficits from the previous year, even if it's from 2010, let's pay them. Let's get rid of them, satisfy them, and keep on moving forward with better books. So.
To your knowledge, are any of the accounts, or do we have any kind of looming deficit for this fiscal year?
The accounts I feel would be over are the one that I'm nervous about, as I said, is the unemployment. The other one is the elections that we just spoke about. I believe that the FICA, with how the school pays at the end of the year, is probably about $20,000 we might have to put in there. We discovered this last year after we'd already set the budget in June when we had that large payment. And I did come before the committee speaking about it before and hoped that was going to be one of the items we could satisfy in fall. However, some of the other needs were put forth on that. We are holding back on expending This month, we will be putting out, or I will be putting out a memo to departments to start holding off on expenditures unless absolutely necessary. That's something we haven't done until maybe 2 months till the end of the fiscal year before. I don't want it to be a panic. It's just something that we should probably do to be prudent right now.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that. So right now, I'm assuming that we're treading water on the retirement account, and I'm wondering where we stand on the healthcare trust fund.
The healthcare trust fund, we've budgeted 5.7 million for. So how that operates is, we come in, we pay the bills, but at the end of the year is where you'd really know on that. We know that we're trending at 101% as of the first 2 months, but that can change from having one person that's sick or not.
Catastrophic illness.
Yeah. We do have stop-loss insurance, so if anything goes over $100,000, we're covered on there.
And as I said, the retirement is just, we're kind of treading water with that.
No, the retirement's a one-time payment, and you pay exactly what you pay on there. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Begley. Mr. Titlebaum, have you any comments or questions?
Not at this point, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, thank you for your patience.
Do I get another sticker?
You will get another sticker. I have a butterfly sticker.
Okay. Derek, on the debt service, I know we had a lot of stuff we were putting on, sitting, the bonds hadn't actually been activated. They were just on short-term loans. We were paying constantly for a lot of stuff that was done for capital. Everything in the budget now is included. John went ahead and put everything into regular bonds. So we'll be paying principal, not just interest now.
we'd be paying, that's going to start realistically in FY14, because in
Okay.
FY13, we held off on there. So that's why when we're looking into the FY14 budget, whereas we're at, let's say, I believe 400 some odd thousand, almost 500,000, and we'll be over 800 to about 812,000. That's including what we voted in at town meeting for the capital plan and any of the other projects on there.
And we're using basically a lot of the meals tax money, et cetera, to offset that. So even though we're in the future expecting to have that 0.75 with that bill when it gets through for capital items, it's still basically going to go back to it paying the loans.
The meals tax is already paying for capital items, so yeah, if anybody's listening, we're not going to get a sudden $400,000 boon. That's accounted for.
Thank you. I just want to make that point for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin.
Through you, Madam Chair. If you remember our discussion last year around, wow, it was pretty late in the season. We talked about the reimbursement because of the tropical storm we had last year, and we've just experienced it again. And what we found out last year was there were some, I don't know, tactical maybe errors in the process, and we ended up getting reimbursed a decent amount less, and you were coming to us for transfers. Are we going to see any of that this year, or has that all been cleared up with what we learned last year?
The first step in there is I don't know if we'll get FEMA reimbursements as a state or a county as a whole. I don't believe that we've hit the threshold. Municipal maintenance costs on that for the entire storm were $7,000, which is a lot better. If you remember, one of the things about Irene was it hit in August when the trees were full of leaves and caused much more damage. It's hard to say, but in a way, the Irene cleaned out a lot of the things that that Sandy would have caused damage on. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just one more point on that. We will be asking the DOR, even though it's $7,000, to expend over our budgets on those. If you remember, we had that on there. We'll be doing that for water pollution control, which had higher costs on there. I can't remember off the top of my head, but some of their pump houses went down with electricity, and you've got to run the generators. You can't stop the flow, if you will.
I also think there's other public safety costs too, because you had a lot of our officers out. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am sorry. I thought it was in order.
That you're correct. There was public safety. Also, even our inspections department, one of the gentlemen was at home. Somebody's house got hit with a tree. They have to come determine whether they can go back in there. Yeah, there's a few things to it, but it's significantly less than what Irene was.
Just, could I ask a follow-up question on that, please, Madam Chair?
Sure, Mrs. Begley.
Mr. Sullivan, although the municipal maintenance was $7,000, was there a significant increase in overtime for police officers that we may be able to be reimbursed for?
My belief is FEMA will not be reimbursing us for anything. I don't believe we'll be getting any money back. I don't believe the state or even our county is going to hit the threshold.
Okay.
There would be overtime because the police, like the EMS, like the fire, and a lot of our people did a great job when we're out there working. So.
Do you happen to know what the threshold is, or?
No, that's just in speaking with Lieutenant Walsek, who's been working with FEMA on there. I don't know how much of that's the common knowledge on there, but that's sort of the belief of everybody in the area. So let's, Peter will complain on being Irish, but let's prepare for the worst on this here.
Is that what's reflected in this budget with the police department being quite high?
The police
No.
department is usually, and if you look at the last few years, which is something, the police overtime is always an issue that everybody's asking at. So more so to Tom's thoughts over there, we have done analysis going year after year looking at where their overtime is and such, and they are within line for it. But one of the things is the police are down extra members this year as well. So sometimes that can affect the overtime. But
Don't misunderstand. It's not, certainly not meant as criticism. And I do. My understanding is that there are some officers that are unable to work their regular shifts, and they have to be covered. So I absolutely understand that. So it's certainly not meant as a criticism. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Begley.
Anything more on the budget?
This is what I'm going to hand out. This is the first time we're trying to gather the information on the water pollution control facility for the revenue and expenditures. And I'm going to pass this out.
Yes, and I'm going to advise the members of the Board of Selectmen that we will not have any discussions either now or amongst ourselves before it's an agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
We're already in a deficit. I know that you said that money from the town meeting transfer would help that, but what do you foresee expenses down the road for the rest of the year for that, or is all the payments made under that line already done?
Mainly the biggest payments were done on there. We always have to set aside $50,000. This is for, I'm not going to get, there's $50,000 that somebody's paid out of workers' comp every year, essentially on there. So we'll have that buffer on there to pay theirs. We paid the police 111F, thank you, police 111F out of there. The police do not receive don't have regular workers' comp on there. They have injury insurance on there, basically, and that's through the Mass General laws. And then the other was the regular workers' comp insurance on there.
So, through you again, though, so you feel that most of the expense out of that is already done, we're just gonna be in that minor deficit, and that's gonna be taken care of from town meeting, or do you think it'll be a higher deficit afterwards?
I don't foresee another deficit in that one.
Okay, we pretty much covered the budget, and I want to concur with my colleagues that I think you've done a great job on this, and we appreciate the information, and we certainly appreciate the diligence that you had to put yourself through with all the changing matters. Can we move, there's no need to go on further to 212 status, because that's where we are, that's where we've been, right?
Well, there's,
What basically, what we've done.
Madam Chair, through you, it's not question of, I mean, we need to, obviously that, the 2012 will be, it's closed. It just needs to be finalized, I guess, through the audit process, and then so I guess the status of the fiscal year 2012 is, how far are we away from getting a look at the management letter?
November, they want to start it?
Powers and Sullivan finished up on Wednesday after Wednesday of last week on there. After really, if anybody came by, those they were in there 9, 10 o'clock at night working on site. So they really ran through it. Right now, we are submitting this week our balance sheet to the Department of Revenue, which is how they generate the free cash. There's a few last minute things on there. We want our balance sheet to be reconciled to the auditors, obviously, on there. But we're also putting in our numbers into the Schedule A for the recap process. And the good news about that part is it is about 2 weeks sooner than we did last year. I do expect for what the DORs are requesting, what Director Perry, he'll be receiving directly from Powers and Sullivan on there. Whether it's the full management letter, I think it's more of the basic financials on there. We may end up getting the management letter more towards January. I think it may be once some of the last little things shake out, but everything that they needed to go through, I believe that they have to satisfy the DOR needs.
Thank you.
Sullivan? How about we watch the town accountant status? Can you give us an update what's going on?
Yeah, we've Assistant Town Accountant Judy Lazan. Don't call her Judith. She doesn't like that. She has been promoted to acting town accountant. We also have a town accountant from another town. We've hired them as a vendor, if you will, to come in, and she's been doing great work, which has really helped us get along because you need somebody else working on there. While they were closing the 2012 books on there and making sure that part was being done, working on the balance sheets and everything that the auditors needed, we didn't want the recap process to fall apart. So we also have a CPA in working on the recap process, which he had finished up today. And that's how we're able to get that information entered in ahead of time, rather than those two having worked on the balance sheets and such and then try and do the recap later. So that's been how we've been handling the department. At the beginning of the new year, the plan is to post for the town accountant position. It's been my feeling that while we're still trying to set our tax rate, and while approximately 200 other communities are still trying to set their tax rate, and it being the holiday season, now might not be the best time to post for the position.
Okay? Any questions on that?
Just one, Madam Chair, through you. So you're going to put together another screening committee for the new town accountant?
We'll go through.
Or was that the Selectmen? I'm sorry. I don't know who that goes to.
We'll go through the process, and there will be a screening committee, and I think it would be made up of a similar makeup on there. I'd want people that have experience with accounting, with the municipal side, and can.
Yes, Tom?
Question. Bay State, are they a possibility?
I would say the bridge has been burned with Bay State.
An equivalent Bay State, another, that's that approach, I wasn't saying specifically Bay State.
I feel the direction that the town is heading in is to have an individual in there, in the office. These, as far as having an outside accounting firm, I don't think I know we wouldn't have gotten our tax rate set last year without it, and it worked fairly well. But having an accountant in-house working in there, working with everybody together is where we're headed.
Okay, it just shouldn't be because we don't have one, it should not be an excuse for not getting the tax rate set this year.
I don't plan on making any excuses.
Moving on to the DOR deadline.
We missed it.
I already knew the answer to that one.
November 1st was the deadline to receive the information from Powers and Sullivan and such. We have been in contact with them. Powers and Sullivan obviously has been in contact with the DOR. Spoke to the director, Perry. We reached out to him ahead of time before it. There's realistically, that's a letter that came out in February, and to not be able to get it by November is egg on the town's face. But we're working now to make sure that we have the tax rate set and properly scheduling and having our accounting books ready for Powers and Sullivan to come in next year on a time which I believe the DOR will probably be requesting a similar timeline.
Any repercussions from that?
Well, potentially the DOR could withhold our state aid if they wanted to. It would have to be that we wouldn't get our tax rate set. They could do a lot of things as a punitive measure. As to whether that's something that they would want to do or make sense, that's going to be up to them. The one thing I'll never try and do is speak for the director of accounts. I think that would be a bad practice. I don't believe we're going to be at that because I think of what we've shown with our books this year. Although it's taking longer than what was requested, I think they're in, this isn't measurable, but a heck of a lot better shape than they were over the last couple of years.
Try it then.
Does anyone have any feelings on how bad we actually look or any real bad repercussions can come from this? Or do you think they'll be patient? Question.
Go to him first.
I believe that the town has struggled through some very difficult challenges, some of which, may have been of its own doing, and some of which were circumstances well beyond our control. I think that we have been as honest and upfront with the DOR as we possibly can, and we are definitely doing a better job this year than we have, and I'm hoping that next year we're timely. But the truth is, it's been many years since we've been on the button with this, and we are. It's not like we're ignoring them. We're letting them know. Do I think that there's going to be any real repercussions? No. Because it doesn't really. What is the point of slapping down someone who's obviously doing the best that they can to make the positive changes? That's not going to encourage the positive behavior that you're looking for.
I can understand that.
If Mr. Slavin wants to comment, he's certainly welcome to, but
DOR came in, Jerry Perry wasn't there, but almost everybody else was about a month ago, Derek? A month and a half?
Yeah.
Month and a half ago?
Yeah, it was.
When they were there, they talked about the November 1st deadline, and they understood that we may not make it. And their comment basically was, just keep us informed, keep us in the loop, which Derek has done, as much as possible. Mr. Perry unfortunately was away during the November 1st deadline on vacation, but everybody in his office knew what was going on. So as far as our relationship with the DOR, I believe we're building trust back, which is the biggest thing we have going for us. Also, our accounting auditing firm, Powers and Sullivan, has been very supportive as well, which helps us a lot. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I remember from a couple of years ago, I think we have a December 31st date in order to set the tax rate, and then if we don't get that done, we have an issue because we can't get the bills out at a certain time, and therefore we would have to go out and borrow. We don't want to get there. So right now, we're on track. We have 22 communities in front of us once we get this done, 23?
I don't know the exact amount on there right now.
When everything gets done, Dominic, it gets put into the DOR for review and everything comes back. You get put into a queue because, you know, you're one of 20 to 30 communities still waiting. So there's no way to, like, if you ask Derek when we're going to get it, he can't answer you. It's not in his control. But I believe we're in a position, I understand where we are, we should be able to set our tax rate.
Excuse me, real quick. Through you, the reason why I actually brought it up, I didn't want to do it out there in the general public. You know, we're sitting here talking, we didn't meet a deadline for the Department of Revenue. It just sounded sounded bad. I wanted to make everyone realize that maybe it's not as bad as it originally sounded. That was the reason for my question.
It's not.
I was in that same meeting, and I believe it was very serious, but I believe that there was, they knew that it was coming. And, they seemed to, want to work with us.
So I agree with that.
Okay. Going on to the 214 budget update. Did you have to?
We're
How you doing?
I'm working on it. We've got the numbers I've put together. On Friday, the department heads will be giving me their final requested budgets on there. Things like the health insurance we've already gotten there, the retirement, the debt service. We have those lined up. One of the measures we're taking is to move with our health insurance to the GIC lookalike, which is an anticipated savings of six. That's you're going to have to vote on it on Tuesday. We've already alerted them. The
Okay.
insurance
I
action.
just wanted to be sure that we had followed the, thank you.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't have spoken about if they hadn't been alerted.
It's not that I don't think you would have done it intentionally, but
I sat in front of some not happy faces. So.
I'm sure you did, but we are live on TV tonight,
Okay.
which is,
Some of us on the finance committee, Mr. Sullivan, we're looking ahead to 214, and we're seeing huge issues. And, I'm kind of curious on how you're gonna hit those, but I mean, we're looking at deficits that we're seeing probably well over $1 million.
I will produce a balanced budget. Whether that's the one that goes forward in town meeting, I would say most likely not. But there will be a balanced budget. It will be balanced with the information that we have and what we need to do to get there.
You don't have an easy job, Mr. Sullivan.
Right.
Trust me. All right, anyone ahead? Okay, let's move on to, a subcommittee report on parking meter fund in the county. Who?
Can I just ask a quick question, Madam Chair? Do you think that we fulfilled the item agenda because I'm not sure that Madam Chair, that the board has to be here, but for the rest of your discussion or the rest of your agenda, but do you think that does everyone think that we satisfied the discussion regarding fall town meeting when Mrs. Smith came before these boards, or could we take something out of order?
You want a motion to recess?
No.
no,
My question is this: the subcommittee and on your item F and H. Did you want us here for the full agenda?
Well, you know, it's up to you if you want to be here. I mean, you know, I would think that you'd want to be here, but you might not be able to answer it.
Yes, that's my concern.
And that's
If you want to address that now, Madam Chair, I'll address it.
Well, we are going to, we have, well, let's take it as it is. You guys, everybody's afraid of the windmill. The letter that we sent to the, Board of Selectmen, the research that we've done, and I want to be very clear about the finance committee's role here. We're just bringing this fact out to the public. The facts are that the town of Wareham voted to fund 50% of this in 1974. They never voted to do 100%. Now we're paying 100%. Okay, it's all. Good. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Excuse me just one second, okay? Because you don't have to comment on this, okay? We just want the taxpayers of Wareham to know what they're paying for. And if they want to continue to pay for it, let them pay for it. We don't have any problems. We're not here to say we're for, against, or anything. And we're not involved in the collective bargaining. We understand it. But we want the people of Wareham to know that they're paying for something, the town of Wareham is paying for something that they have not authorized. And that's what the research that we've done on the FinCom, and we want to bring forward to the Board of Selectmen, because we do not have the authority to do anything about it other than be an advisory board to you. And we just want it to be on record that we did advise the Board of Selectmen of all of our findings and presented them to you. And again, you've made it quite clear that you can't comment because of collective bargaining.
Madam Chair, let me assure you that through your meetings and through the news media, we have heard your message loud and clear. We are not going to comment further on that, neither will the town administrator. Thank you.
And that's all we wanted to do, okay? Thank you very much, okay? The fall town meeting updating, do we have any discussion about that? We don't need any discussion about that, right? But we just did. I think we pretty much discussed it. And,
Let's take a recess.
well, I'm not sure what's going on with my item. This was one of Mr. McDonald's articles he wanted on here. Subcommittee on Parking Meter Fund and Accounting.
Madam Chair, do you want to explain? I'm going to, I think it's time, we're going correct. We're going to, I'd like a motion to adjourn. Any member of the Board of Selectmen that wishes to stay and view the rest of the meeting is welcome to. You can. You can do whatever you want, Mr. Slavin. I'll give you a sticker. 2.
Motion to adjourn the Board of Selectmen meeting.
I have a motion by Mrs. Begley, a second by Mr. Titlebaum. Any discussion, comments, objections? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Abstained? 4-0-0. Thank you very much to each of you for taking the time. I appreciate you coming up here so that our widely viewed program can be watched by everybody who's home in front of a nice warm fire tonight. And I hope to do this again soon. Thank you.
Just one thing for Janet, since she'll be transcribing these. The Board of Selectmen adjourned at 8:15, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank the FinCom.
You're a good clerk, Madam Clerk.
And I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for attending and participating. Thank you very much.
We lose most of the audience now that the stars are gone, is that what you're saying?
I don't think we need to. Let's get through it. Okay, what? Which one? G? F? Okay. All right, let's go continue on item F. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Item F was put on here at my request because there's been a great deal of discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair. Agenda item F was put on with regard to parking meter fund. There's been a lot of discussion in the past 2 or 3 years about parking meter revenue, where it goes, how it's collected, should we get kiosks there, and it doesn't seem to be any real answers going on. So I was going to suggest that perhaps there would be a few people who would be willing to work to try to collect the information that's already exists out there.
when Dick Paulson sat on this board, he went out and got some bids. We had a harbor master come before us and talk about that. It seems to me it's a significant source of revenue, and we should at least understand the issue clearly. And I certainly don't, even though I've heard it from many different sources and directions.
Well, are you looking for me to appoint a subcommittee to study this?
If
Mrs.
you would like to
Donahue?
do so, I could certainly do so on my own, but it would be more
Okay.
fun to have company.
I would like to appoint you as the chairman of the subcommittee. And how about Bonnie?
I don't want to be chair.
Are you interested?
I'm not so much. Wow, somebody turn that up. I'm not so much interested as that I've had this particular topic. I'm looking right at Alan because we just had this discussion last week. Parking meter fund has become real popular discussion recently, and I commend you for wanting to dig into it. But I think it's a broader problem. I have a particular situation with the community events committee, and I was actually going to try to contact our acting town administrator to find out how I get time with whatever accounting firm is presently using that space. Because the community events committee books don't match what the accounting office has. And this ties into this whole parking meter situation. The CEC has tried to kind of push forward with getting this kiosk program maybe jump-started in some way. We've even put money aside in hopes of buying the first one. We've also had discussions about working with CETA because we feel like CETA is where we should start. They are supposed to know the plan for this town. They're supposed to have a vision of what is supposed to go on in this town, and I think they should be in the forefront of any parking meter plan, and they should be investigating it thoroughly. I didn't realize I was planning on bringing this discussion to the FinCom because I feel it's my obligation as the Finance Committee seat on the Community Events Committee that I have a huge amount of investigating to do. The situation is at the same point that CPA funds were some time ago, and the fact is we just don't know where our money is. 3 different accounting methods have been used since CEC was started because of the 3 different accountants have been through there. So we don't even know what portion of our parking meter fund is getting put into CEC and how much is left. And this is really, really a huge concern. I would be more than happy to be one part of a subcommittee only because I'm going to be investigating this along the way. It sounds from our current TA that the accounting office is probably extraordinarily busy and we probably won't be able to do anything until after the first of the year. But it is something we have to get done.
I think it's important that we get it done well before town meeting, and again, I would ask that Marilyn, and I'm glad Bonnie volunteered for the subcommittee. Would you like to, Mr. Cameron? All right, then you 3 would work on this committee and keep us advised, and you've done great jobs on the other committee, so, all right, thank you. All right.
Madam Chair, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I would definitely speak with Mr. Pina. They've received, I believe, a grant for parking study. So if anything's going to be done, I mean, that would be one of the key components.
And he's great to work with. I don't know if you've worked with him before, but he's really a great guy to work with.
And to clarify, I don't really intend to reinvent the wheel. I just would like to be able to pull this information together from Mr. Pina, and I was hoping Bonnie would step forward.
Yeah.
It's been out there for quite a while, and nothing seems to be concrete, or maybe it is getting done, and we're just not aware of it. So it seems to me that there's 2 issues. One is to get control of the revenues that are coming in, and the other is where are they going? So we can. I can't envision starting much before the holidays, but maybe we'll just do a rough outline of what we all expect to have happen and take it from there. Thank you.
If I might ask, Madam Chairman, I don't want a commitment from Derek or anything like that, but do you foresee when I might be able to work with the town accountant's office? Because I'm talking about going all the way back from the beginning of CEC.
Outlook would be good. So let's get you together at the beginning of the year. As soon as we have them finishing up these last bit, everything should be slowing down in there to be able to get you in there, and maybe we can even grab one of the two people that we have in there now to work with you. So.
Okay, I would appreciate that. I just want to say to the Finance Committee that I never thought, I said this to Mr. Slavin the other night, when community events started, we never really thought that we had to have our own treasurer or accountant sitting in the seat. And, you know, I wasn't asleep at the wheel, but I had a whole bunch of different reports handed to me in 5 different ways, I'll tell you that much. But now that I know, I'm going to work on getting it from the beginning. I'm talking about 3 years worth of work that has to go back into this. And then when that's over, my intention is to train one of the other members at large to learn how to do it and keep up with it, because I can't do it by myself. I'm really only supposed to be the
Liaison.
interlocking wheel in the not to do the work myself. So
Okay, well, if we have that, do we have any more liaison reports? Monty's. Public relations update?
Thank you. Caitlin left, but I did meet with Caitlin Russell from Wareham Week to give her a basic background. And one of the intents that we talked about before and would like to see is, I was trying to give her just the basic vocabulary so she can watch the process, starting with how you build a budget for the next year. So I think that they will be following forth on that, and I would like to be able to explain some of the components as we get into budget discussions. Just basically break it down, make it simple.
Well, I think that's a great idea, because we've discussed prior that we want to get, the press has offered to be our ally, and we want to get the facts out to them and out to the folks at home so that they can understand.
And I think you brought it up clearly, and we have a great deal of respect for anyone that has to try to work making a balanced budget in this kind of environment, and that we know there's going to be some tough decisions, so let's try to make them be as non-controversial and work within the facts, and that's what my goal is as we work forward in the process. So if anyone has any information that want to get out there, I follow the commentaries, the blogs, if you will, just to correct any misinformation that may be put forth. I think our motto kind of is just the facts. But I've also thrown out there to people that they should feel free to contact us with questions if they have them, and we can make that clarification. So that's really what the goal is.
I believe that's a good philosophy, and that's the way we should be. Okay, so there's any other liaison reports? Do you have anything from the school, Sam, or anything? Okay. Anybody have anything? Who's working with the police? Is it Dave? I think David is, yeah. Okay, any new business, excuse me?
Just so you know, capital planning, Frank's not here. The police chief, I believe, delivered his request for capital planning today. It's right down to the deadline.
We know our new TA is gonna work with our capital planning committee. Yes. Okay, great. I'd entertain a motion. Has everybody read the minutes of the October 3rd meeting? I mean, I got them online. Did everybody else?
I did, but I have to sign it, but I didn't bring a copy to sign, so I'll just sign it.
I have a copy here too. Okay. All right, great. Can yes?
I've got some comments on it. Is that okay?
Sure. Corrections or comments?
Oh, corrections, I guess.
Okay.
They're,
And it's the 22nd meeting?
I'm talking about the third.
Oh, the third one. I don't have the third one here. Where is it? I have the 22nd. All right. I don't have, I only have 22nd, and I have the 28th. No, I don't. I have 2 copies of the 22nd. Go ahead, though. Go ahead.
This is back to our old friend, Mr. Quinn. In the third paragraph, last line, it says, but the Board of Selectmen has no authority to issue payroll cash based on the Supreme Court's decision. I thought the Supreme Court decision, as I understand it, is the state's share. And the basis of that, we assume we don't, other towns don't have to pay their share.
Well,
So
they were the ones that challenged it. The city of Boston
they
challenged
yeah,
it.
that's right, and the Supreme Court's decision was that, with respect to Boston,
Correct, that's correct.
they were okay.
They didn't, it wasn't a broad
It
spectrum.
didn't refer
So,
specifically to Wareham.
What's the correction?
Well,
Are you referring to the letter?
No authority issued payroll cash based without town meeting approval.
Is that somebody's statement?
No, that's what, I was trying to clean that up. Rather than,
I'm sorry, I
the
can't.
Supreme Court wasn't the one that said that we didn't have authority.
Are you referring though to the letter? Or the minutes of the meeting?
To the minutes.
To the minutes?
The minutes, the only thing we have to change in the minutes, if it's right or wrong, what was said was said.
Well, this is what was,
All right, I don't have a copy in front of me, and I'm gonna ask that we defer voting on these minutes too.
We'll do it 22nd.
Okay,
down to the third paragraph from the bottom, there's a misspelling. It says it when it means it.
okay, we're gonna defer, okay. We're not gonna vote on this, okay, we'll get it next time, okay? Thank you. How about the meetings,
22nd.
22nd? October 20,
To approve the minutes from October 22nd, 2012.
Second.
any comments? All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, unanimous, okay. Okay, now, next meeting time? Date? Any of you have any, I'm,
Next Wednesday after.
you wanna do a meeting, if you wanna do a meeting next Wednesday, I can do one next Wednesday,
That would be the 5th.
the 5th. What, excuse me, go ahead. I don't have an agenda right now. I'm just wondering if folks have an agenda that they wanna meet on next week. I personally don't see anything for next week, but does anyone else?
Well, let's look at the entire month, why don't we, and
Yeah,
decide,
because of holidays.
because the
sure.
holidays are coming up. Do you want to meet the month of December? Derek, do you see us, something coming up that we need to be informed of?
I'll be submitting the
The budget. He'll be submitting the budget. December.
on December, it'll probably be out the 14th, because the 15th is a Saturday. Probably have that
So December
available, or
14th.
sending them
So
out.
the 19th will be, we would probably get that on the 19th?
Yeah, that's what I believe on there. And then we need to set up the all-day budget hearing
Yes.
in January. Maybe worth it to split it into 2 days, and I don't wanna tell the committee what to do, but it might be worth seeing if we can get the selectmen on there as well, so we have.
So we're not
the
wasting
two-
time.
Yeah, two groups hearing it at the same time
Okay,
would be my
Okay.
preference.
so we're not gonna see the budget until the 19th?
19th.
Do we see anything between
to meet
before then?
I like you people, but
I don't either.
a holiday party, but this.
Tom?
I won't make cookies.
Okay.
So it'll be 12/19?
The 19th?
12/19. 6:30.
So you won't have to comment the largest.
All right, baby, I won't call you this week.
Okay. I guess I'll entertain okay, so you want the 19th, so nothing before the 19th, and then, do you wanna see how things go, and we'll schedule ahead? We'll have to do a lot of work after that.
Oh, most definitely.
Starting the first of the year, we're gonna really have to grind things.
Set up the all day tonight, or do you wanna just?
He's gotta work with the selectmen, don't you? First?
Well, if we could set it up with, we have to set it up with one board or committee. If you guys wanna set it up now, we try and see if that works for the others on there.
Okay, listen, I'd like to see this meeting set up in the next week if we could. Could I put someone from my committee in touch with you, Derek? Because I'm gonna be out next week, probably the week after, so, can one of you folks, Larry or Marilyn, which one of you step up, can you?
It's your schedule, I mean,
It was?
how many of us are working days, it's gonna be a problem.
But I just have to get in touch with him, that's all I have.
Yeah, all you do is get in touch it, you know?
Yeah,
What am I doing now?
I'll do it, Larry.
Okay,
Yeah.
Marilyn will do it.
Would you get Marilyn's number in there? Thank you.
He's got mine.
Okay,
You've got mine.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody, for tonight. Thank you very much, Mr. Town Administrator.